Greetings mortals, and welcome to Immortal Empire's campaign in Total War Warhammer 2. We're going to be playing as the Dark Elves, and specifically as the Blessed Dread, the faction in the bottom left, led by this guy with a squid face, and yes, that was the only reason I'm picking this. This faction specializes in piracy. We get extra ships, the Black Arks, ships that allow us to recruit and replenish while we're sailing around in the sea. So it seems they're set up to go around and just annoy the other factions, and that sounds pretty good. Here we are then at the start of the campaign. We've got a little army, not very much, but it's got a couple of decent units in it. We get a mission right away to loot or raise 4 places or something, basically a generic mission which we'll do at some point, guaranteed. As for our starting position, we are in the bottom left, as I mentioned. We do start with one town, but it's not very good, and it only covers that little island that it's on. So we'd have to go back over there to recruit, normally at least. Here's a look at the map around us. It looks kind of ugly. I don't know why the world map looks like this. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but we are in the bottom left of the playable area. And the main focus for us will be the sea. We can get all kinds of advantages and bonuses if we fight along coastlines. And I was noting here that the High Elf Island in the middle of the map is pretty much all coastline, so that's something to think about for later. Here's what I mean by all this. We have this Black Ark as we start the campaign, something the Dark Elves can normally get, but we get one right off the bat, and we can get more of them more easily than the Dark Elves usually can. So we can use these things as mobile settlements. You can recruit and replenish anywhere near them within this little circle you can see that's dotted around them, their sphere of influence. So this means we can get various advantages over the rest of the factions by mainly fighting along coastlines. Though, right now we want to focus on more local objectives, which, handily enough, are along a coastline. We've got some High Elves to the north controlling the Star Tower. There are also lots of ruins around this area, but unfortunately for the game, I've played Total War Warhammer 2 before, and I know that pretty much every ruin on the map is actually just where the Skaven settlements are, and you just have to reveal them by going there. So we'll get onto that soon enough. We can also use our Black Ark to pick up shipwrecks out to sea. These give us random bonuses, or at least sometimes they do. In this case, I can pick something or something else. I go for the second thing, and it turns out to be increased spotting range, which isn't particularly helpful. We do get a weapon drop though, so we can put that on our main man Squid Face to make him ever so slightly more powerful in battles. With that done, we need to make a move. The obvious move the game seems to want you to go for is to move north. There are some Skaven there and a suspicious ruin, so we pretty much already know that's one of the Skaven bases. And I actually already happen to know that only Mangrove Coast in our starting region is actually a ruin. How do I know? Well, I tried to start this campaign on very hard and went to the place in the bottom left of our home region and got absolutely annihilated. So this time we're going to have some foreknowledge and start off by going for somewhere that is a ruin. This means we're not going to be fighting for a few turns, allowing us to gradually recruit new units using our Black Ark, even though we're moving through territory we don't control. So we'll gradually build up an army and then get to the fighting afterwards. I should also mention that this is an abridged campaign, and if you don't know what that means, it essentially involves me not talking about a lot of the stuff that doesn't especially matter. So the research choices, diplomacy, things that we're seeing on the screen right now, just so you know they're in the game. They usually don't have a big impact on what's actually happening turn to turn, but of course if they actually do, then I'll mention it. Aside from that, we're going to stick to the action, so why don't we move on to something happening. What's more action-packed than a puzzle? I reached the ruin, and you have the option at these ruins to do a puzzle instead of doing anything else this turn to get an unknown reward. I suppose you can pause the video if you want to do the puzzle yourself. I actually spent about 4 minutes, according to the video recording, trying to work out what this is. The only clue I'll give is that it's way less complicated than I thought it was. I completely overthink it, and once I realized how you solve this, it was instantaneous. I was like, oh right, okay. It was that one. So, we get a reward for solving that puzzle. The reward is an item we can equip. It's something to do with magic, which means it's effectively worthless to us because our guy can't do magic. So that was a waste of time. It also wastes a turn as well. At the start of the next turn, we get this thing about the beastmen rising up, and this is a good time to note that I'm playing the SFO Overhaul mod. I don't actually know what SFO stands for, and no, I didn't read the mod description. I just installed it because everyone said it was a good idea, so do let me know what the mod actually does, if you will, in the comments. Anyway, So I said no to the beastmen rising up, because one of the places they rise up is actually right here, as I discovered in my previously failed campaign, and that was a large part of why it failed. So we're not going to let them rise up, just to keep things moving along. Anyway, we can build up our settlement here. Annoyingly, the colonization mechanic in this game kind of sucks. So you colonize things using your own troops instead of people, so now we have to wait and make our troops replenish from themselves. They'll quickly reproduce in their little colony, and eventually we're able to move on, and I move to the west and attack the next ruin over, and of course this ruin is actually a Skaven base, so we immediately declare war on them and get some things started. We've got a balanced engagement here to attack the town, but the enemy army is mostly the Skaven clan rats and slave troops. Basically pure trash, below trash even, just sacrificial units, and we have actual elven units with a lot of armor and swords, so I didn't trust that balance part and just went for it. I'm not going to do the thing where you run down the edge of the map, for this battle at least, if only to take a look at our troops. You might remember, if you've seen any of my earlier Warhammer 2 videos, you can run down the edge of a map in pretty much any siege to avoid most of the tower fire. In this case though, we're just doing it vanilla, we're just going to run at them. As for what we actually have in our army, I'm going to be focusing on these Black Ark Corsairs. We get a bonus with these guys. I think they're cheaper and maybe a bit better in combat compared to the regular versions the Dark Elves have, as a result of our Legendary Lord's special skills. I don't know if they're any good, but we're just going to do it to be on brand. The Skaven are spawning some rats in front of us, but someone can just go to kill them. Everyone else gets to work on this settlement. We can use the legendary Free Ladder's ability to just suddenly climb up the wall, and we'll be in. Some of the wall isn't even defended, so that should be easy enough to take. And where it is defended, it's defended by some pure trash. So again, that should be easy enough to take. We're also attacking the gatehouse. Behind the gate, the enemy were massing, giving me a chance to blow them up. Now I did say we don't have any magic, but this is a result of fighting near the coast. One of these bonuses, the Black Ark thing, gives you various magic-like abilities that you can use in battle even if you don't have any winds of magic available. So that's handy. We blow up some rats. They actually opened the gate for us to charge out and attack, but that doesn't really achieve anything because we'll just kill them even more now. Very handy. As for the wall top, well, it's just an absolute massacre. The Skaven are just routing all over the place. We've got this feral manticore, a giant flying horned lion thing, and that's having a great time just mauling the rats to death. Our troops are barely doing anything. The combat's pretty janky in Warhammer 2 up close, so mostly it's just a weird slippery mess. But we are doing some damage, I hope, at some point. At least this is doing damage, although it's not doing that much damage. We're using the Black Ark thing again. And one of the things about Warhammer 2 is that these attacks are much less powerful than they look. That was one of my early disappointments with the game. Anyway, as you can see, they eventually closed the gate, which means some of my troops are now trapped on their side of the gate and we can't reinforce them. This, as it turns out, doesn't matter, because we're just going to kill all the things they're attacking us with. And we can do some supporting fire still against the crowds of rats back here. And as I said, while it looks like we're absolutely devastating them, it really just takes off some hit points and everything gets back up and the unit's fine after this. Although in this case, the enemy is so weak that we probably are actually getting some model kills with these attacks. We also now go into beast mode. I can't remember what this is called. Basically, as a Dark Elves faction, once you kill a certain amount of things, all your things get killed, you go into this purple glowing mode for a while, which massively increases your attack. We're not in a very good situation to use this because most of my troops are milling about doing nothing. But basically, it's a good time to charge forwards and kill everything, and we do kill everything. They did have this one good unit, an unbreakable unit of flail troops. They were going toe-for-toe with my Corsairs and actually fighting evenly, doing an even trade, but the involvement of a Manticore soon changed that. And the battle ends up being a victory. We lost some troops, but in this game in particular, losses are virtually irrelevant unless you lose an entire unit. Replenishment's real high, so we'll be fine. We essentially won't lose anything in most of these battles. I'm going to go for the loot and occupy, which often in Total War is a bad idea. But in my experience, in this game, you get a lot more money for doing the loot than it costs to repair the damage from the loot. So you can make a profit, and there were various other things we got by doing that as well, like slaves and replenishment. Slaves being a thing that increases your economy in the background, basically. Probably won't talk too much about that. And yes, we get the settlement as well. I am trying to take this starting region entirely if I can. Although, my looting actions do cause a rebellion to spawn. It's just a half stack of Skaven, so don't need to worry about that obviously. And now we get a story mission of sorts. We need to power up our main man's swords. They need some blood, and the way to do it is to go and take some place in particular. The bad news is that that place is on literally the other side of the map, so it'll take us a while to get there, but it's by the sea, so we could sail up there and do that at some point to get 10 grand and slightly higher stats on our general. But for now, we'll focus on the local mission, that being to take our home region and then raid stuff around here and see what happens. In the meantime, let's get that rebellion gone. We can effectively use this to farm public order because these Skaven rebellions have no power whatsoever. The balance bar gives me some uncertainty there, but I was pretty certain we're fine, and indeed we kill them for free. Afterwards I decided to keep walking west down the road to the next town, thinking this is probably a Skaven settlement, and of course it is, 9 times out of 10 a ruin is. There's actually quite a lot of stuff in this one because there's a full stack army on top of the garrison. I think attacking would have been doable, but I wasn't so sure at the time, so I decided to walk away. The hope is that the stack will come outside and fight me for a regular battle. Here's the next turn when basically nothing happened, so I went back again and besieged it. This time we're going to take things just one step further. We're going to leave them under siege and see if they sally, so we get a field battle but also with the garrison. What happened was, they didn't again, so after a couple of turns of nothing happening, I'm actually going to go back because our settlement's about to rebel over here again, and I think a freely spawned rebel army might actually be able to overcome the still relatively dead garrison of any of my towns. So I go back and go into ambush mode. This gives us the added potential that the enemy will attack and get ambushed, but of course they don't again. As for the rebels, well, they appear and they die for free. This is quite good because it gives me experience and money and stuff. The money is especially useful because, as you can see at the top, we are running a deficit. Our army is too big for our measly and mostly no buildings filled territory. But we're just going with it. We can make money by attacking the enemy. Let's attack the enemy right now, in fact. That big Skaven army seemed to have disappeared, so I came over here to their settlement. Their garrison's not very good, so we can just auto-resolve that and get a free capture. I thought I might get ambushed, actually, as I went across, but no, their army has walked off. It's not just hidden itself. And here we have to decide what to do with the town. My initial thought was raise, but the thing is you don't get that much stuff for raising. We can get more resources from this capture by doing a sack or a loot and occupy. However, what I wanted to achieve here was to just ignore this direction. I want to, ideally, stabilize my home region and then leave this part of the map entirely. So with that in mind, I'm going to go for a raise, trying to just make a dead zone on our border to slightly reduce the chance that our place gets invaded if we move our main army away. I didn't realise this, but after doing the raise, it puts you back in your own territory afterwards, so we can even replenish as well. Not that we particularly need that. But before I go away, in the next turn, the Skaven army does come back. I'm guessing it just walked off somewhere else, lost its territory, now it's come back for revenge. They're in march stance. That means they can't retreat if we go and attack them, and they get some debuffs in battle. So let's attack them. We get a really uncertain balance bar. I'm pretty sure we actually have a gigantic advantage here, but because of that uncertainty, I did this one manually. There was a bit of a worry early on, because they had catapults that could bombard us as we approached the enemy's hilltop position. Now though, we benefit from Warhammer attacks being much less powerful than they appear. We get slammed with direct hits, but we just lose a little bit of health basically and keep running. Then the catapult started moving, so that bought us plenty of time to run at them. This army build is very suited to running at them, the classic off-ED strategy, because we've got units that are weak against ranged attacks. So we might as well just run across the map and attack as soon as possible to get these battles going nice and fast. The Skaven are trying to run away here by the looks of things, probably the right choice. But eventually all of our Black Elf Corsairs will get into battle against all these clan rats and stuff, where we'll have absolutely no trouble whatsoever, and their danger unit, the catapults, is going to be distracted by this manticore which flew around to attack the enemy from the back. Once the fights start, the enemies start to rout real fast. I'm guessing these units have trashed morale even at the best of times, and with all these losing melee combats, that's not going to help. So we start slaughtering our way through this army, and that balance bar swings in our favour. They had one decent unit on the end of the line here. They were taken down by archers though, some nice friendly fire-tastic crossbow attacks basically. Doesn't matter about killing your own men because they just come back after the battle, of course. Here's after the battle. We lost virtually nothing, we get some money off this, and that is sorted. The Skaven faction is destroyed by this victory, and we get this nice trait on our lord that stops us getting swamp attrition. That's quite good because a lot of coastal areas do have the swamp territory type, which means you lose men as you walk around, so that will come in very useful. We've got a couple of things to sort out at home though, before we go adventuring. One is to kill more rebels. Public order is absolutely abysmal, there's tons of Skaven corruption and we just don't really have any buildings either, which doesn't help, and having slaves everywhere reduces public order. So we just kill some more rebels to try and mitigate that for a while. Then I go up to the top of our region, where there is one more Skaven ruin we need to capture to have the entire province. There was pretty much nothing there, so we take that for free. And I'm going to loot and occupy it to get some money off them since I don't really care about the buildings inside. With that, our home region is secure, we're not at war along any of the borders of it, so it's time to go away. That capture completed a mission for us, and this revealed to me that there are bonus objectives in this game. In some of my previous Total War campaigns, I've always tried to do all of the bonus objectives just as a little side challenge. So, now that I know there actually are some, let's try and do them in this next chapter. We need to capture 8 things, that's the main objective. And we're going to do all these things here: recruit a hero, level up our main guy, those things are pretty easy. Get money from raiding, that's more challenging because really you need a case where standing around and raiding is actually a good idea, as opposed to just attacking and taking money that way. Well, I suppose we can forcibly do it at some point. Also needed to build something and get some war hydras, a particular unit, so we'll try and work towards that with our home region. We'll get the buildings you need for it. There was also a rebellion here, a bigger rebellion this time, but it also dies just as fast. That charges up some more public order for us, and with that we are going to move out to go and do some piracy. And our first target is the very nearby High Elf faction, these Lawmasters. They're not aligned to anyone, they've got no diplomatic ties, and they've only got one region, so it's the perfect target. We arrive soon enough. Unfortunately, you can't land and start a siege at once, even for these port settlements. So we end up just standing there, but it's okay, the enemy have me covered because they come out and attack me. And it actually looks like this is going to be much harder than I thought. I suppose I didn't really think about it at all, but actually there's a full stack garrison and a half stack army, and the garrison has some elite and decent units in it as well. Another thing to consider is that all of these high elf units tend to have bows, even their melee-ish units also shoot arrows. So, with our army packed with things that don't have shields and are generally weak against ranged attacks, we actually have something of a class disadvantage on top of that standard balance bar disadvantage because we're outnumbered. Well, we're not allowed to retreat from this situation, so we have to give this one a go. In the battle, the balance bar looks better for us, so that's something. But we still have that class disadvantage to overcome, and I did have an idea for that. You can see I've put one unit of swords with shields out in front of the line, ready to act as a sponge. And here come the enemy, rushing up with what are in effect multiple different archer lines. Some of the archers are also a melee unit, and some of their melee units are also archers. So overall, we're in trouble. However, we do have a new secret weapon. We've got some Reaper bolt throwers added to this army recently. They can attack from the safety of the back of our formation on top of that hill, so that's very nice. They've got great vantage to shoot down at the battlefield. It's going to come in very useful throughout the fight. Now it's time for the gambit. Our guys with shields run forwards, and indeed they do take a lot of the arrows. Unfortunately, they weren't always the closest thing to the enemy, so on the end of the line there, we're tanking a load of arrows on our Corsairs. Not very nice. Looks like they have at least one actual melee unit that comes out to meet us. Unfortunately, I wasn't actually giving attack orders for the most part here. I think my men had move orders. So you see here, they run forwards and actually stop in front of the enemy because they've moved to wherever I told them to run to. Get hit by a load more arrows, and then battle is joined. Overall, this plan might have worked because we do have a lot of stuff in combat across the line. The sword unit at the front got absolutely annihilated, but maybe their sacrifice saved more of my Corsairs, who are probably better in melee. As for my ranged units, they were advancing down through a forest on our right. However, the enemy sent their giant eagles to come in and disrupt things. This wasn't so bad because we have hand bows in there. They have less range than regular archers and crossbows, but they can move and shoot at the same time, so we can run away from the eagles while still gradually damaging them. The issue we're going to have with the fight in general is that we haven't committed everything the enemy have to melee, so while the melees are happening we're still being showered with arrows and we're losing men rapidly. We are doing a lot of damage back, because a lot of the enemy's mainline units, their Lothar and Seaguard, are an archer slash anti-cav unit, so against an anti-infantry unit like the Corsairs, something with good melee stats, they do die, so some of the fights are going well, but as I said, we don't have enough melee fights going, and a lot of the fights are effectively ranged engagements where we're just being peppered with arrows constantly. Our leader, Squidface Felheart, is trying to hack his way through to attack this enemy elven princess. He is a hero type that focuses on killing other heroes, so I want him to go fight the enemy commander, but he got bogged down, and I need to micro that more to get him out of there basically. As you can see, enemy groups are all over the place and my troops are now nowhere to be seen across a lot of the battlefield, so things are becoming troubling. We do actually start that fight with the enemy princess. However, Felheart routs before he gets the kill. The princess might be anti-hero as well for all I know, so there's no guarantee that that's actually a good engagement. So yes, our army is gone, as you can see from up here, but the balance bar's still kind of where it was at the start of the fight. The enemy have taken very large casualty numbers, but they have more full and usable units left, especially in the middle, and those archers are just shooting all over the place. The AI has a great micro advantage because anything it has that comes back from routing can immediately start shooting at my men, whereas I have to actually find things coming back from routing and click on them to get them back into the fight. I did have a reserve actually of 2 units of spearmen on the left who were hidden in the forest, and now they are deployed to lock everything down on that flank. The centre's just gone, Felheart is routing, and we don't have any troops left, except for our Manticore, but now all of these enemy archers are focusing fire onto it, and it's actually starting to die, plus the Lothar and Seaguard are good against it in melee. We're having issues as well on our right. Here we're sort of strong because all of our ranged stuff is still alive, but it's not going to be the case for long because the enemy have set up a bolt thrower of their own which is now targeting us. They were just doing nothing for most of the fight so far, but now we're in trouble. Our bolt throwers are still going and still picking up kills, especially where the enemy are distracted chasing my routing units instead of attacking the bolt throwers. We've just about reached the killing threshold, so we're getting powered up now. Any melees we do have going will now be more advantageous, but we don't have that many going to be fair. We're mostly running around trying to get them and just being hit by arrows all the time, and there's really nothing we can do about that. I need to rely now on my ranged units who are still somewhat alive coming in from this forest. In a ranged battle with the enemy ranged stuff we'll do okay. We have numbers and we have crossbows instead of bows, and maybe they're more powerful than bows. I don't know if it works like in the other Total War games. Anyway, at the back of the map there's another small fight going on. The enemy sent a hero unit to attack my artillery, and this is good because the hero takes so long to actually kill them one by one that we've been able to keep firing for most of the battle, and one of the batteries isn't even engaged yet, so we're still picking up kills by the 100. Our crossbows coming in from that forest are doing okay. They are pushing back the enemy's archers. Possibly one thing helping us is that one of our crossbow units, the Dark Shards, is a shield in crossbow units, so presumably they're good at range and good at range defense because they have a missile block chance. As for the handbows, they probably don't have that advantage, but they're just tanking enemy arrows all the same. I guess they have some decent armor because they're also a melee unit as well. Across the field you can see it's really just a game of chase. We need to try and get the last remaining enemy units into battles with our last remaining units, but that's not always a good idea, like right here where the enemy's Phoenix Guard are gradually cutting down all the guys I send to attack them. Bit of a problem really. Up on the hill, that enemy hero is still gradually killing one of my bolt thrower crews. The other crew has actually used up all its ammo, so now they can join the fight as a weak melee unit, handy for doing some of the chasing work. As for the Phoenix Guard, I managed to get some scraps of Corsairs to rear attack them. Looks like Felheart's joining the fun as well. And this routs them, so we sort of defeat them. But this is where the slipperiness of Warhammer comes in. Even encircled, they'll just slip out of there and then come back from routing. And the next time we look, we're fighting them again in another unfavourable engagement. So that's a shame. As for everything else, nothing's alive. Look at this field, it's empty, it's just a few routing units, and even the units that are alive have like no troops left in them. In the centre of all this, we've managed to get the enemy's leader into battle with Felheart, and now I can use his deadly duelist special ability to increase his stats for this duel. I wasn't sure whether I'd win, but then a shadow looms. Yes, we can throw the Manticore into the fight as well. There are no special rules about dueling, unlike in Three Kingdoms. So we just get a massive beast to come in and take off all the enemy's health, and she runs away, so that's good stuff. As for the hill hero, he's gradually coming back down now, but I can just keep my distance and not fight him to avoid losses. We'll just lead him around for a bit. The Phoenix Guard take out all the guys I had fighting them. Now they're going to have to fight my hand bows with no ammo. I guess they're not a very good melee unit, but they're still okay, so they'll hold their own, while a unit with ammo does some friendly fire-tastic attacks. And altogether they do actually defeat those Phoenix Guard in the end, since they were nearly dead. And speaking of nearly dead, their leader comes back from routing on the edge of the field, but the Manticore chased her, and with one slash she is killed, and finally we have an advantage on the balance bar. I'm pretty sure both sides have nothing at this point. Looks like our advantage is fading away actually, because their bolt thrower came back from routing. It had been not firing at me for a lot of the fight recently, because it routed away, but it's now back and it's shooting at my bolt thrower crew. They're getting a taste of their own medicine. We've pretty much ended the battle though. There's nothing on the field apart from that bolt thrower and their hero, but that's enough stuff to give them still some decent presence on that balance bar. We're trying to fight the hero here, it's not going all that well, so I'm bringing in Felhart to come and do some damage. Or am I? The Manticore suddenly appears and does a lot more damage. And with that, we're going to be in business because this attack reduces the hero's morale. He starts plodding away, and now the balance bar will finally be in our favour. This also routs the bolt crew, basically the bolt thrower crew. It's over. We've actually won after all that, with virtually nothing left. A Pyrrhic victory indeed, but now we can test my earlier claim that taking losses doesn't matter. Look at our unit cards. We only lost one unit, and losing units is what actually matters in the long run. So while we lost 2/3 of our army and the enemy lost like 3/4, they lost way more units, so they can't get their stuff back. Plus, we get 15% replenishment from captives after the fight, so we're down to only having lost 50% of our army. And we get a turn of replenishment because they attacked in their turn. And we get that replenishment because we're near the Black Ark, so we've already lost less than half of our army now. And while we do the siege and make a couple of pieces of siege equipment, we can replenish the rest of our army. And we can even recruit new units, so we can just turn this around. We can have lost virtually nothing in that fight, or nothing at all really, whereas the enemy will have actually lost those units. They can't replenish or get them back because of the siege. That's the power of the Black Ark, and the power of spamming the maximum replenishment upgrade, which you can see I've done here in the skill tree. I'm going to use the rest of my skill points as I level up on making this guy really good in single melee combat. He's going to be an assassin basically. We'll send him around to try and kill enemy leaders. Well, we'll get to that stuff for next time. So thank you very much for watching the first part of this Dark Elves campaign, Abridged. We're going to go pirate the rest of the world and see what happens, and as I said, well, I'll try and do all of those bonus objectives and focus on doing these story objectives and quest things that pop up, just to have some focus and some fun. I don't know what the actual campaign objective is, but I don't especially care about achieving it in this campaign. We'll just see how things go. Join me next time to see how things go.